everyone to tonight's online community forum to talk about the coronavirus and how it is impacting people in our community. My name is Pamela Duncan, or Pam, and I'm the president and CEO of Metropolitan Development Council. I'm joined here tonight by Twina Nobles, president and CEO of the Tacoma Urban League, with whom we partner for this series of conversations. And now I'd like to introduce our facilitator for tonight's conversation, Amanda Westbrook.
Thank you, Pam. Good evening. Tonight is the 12th in a series of discussions where we are diving into the different ways the virus is impacting Tacoma and Pierce County. Tonight, our panel will speak with, and they are experts about resources that are available for our community members in the Tacoma, Pierce County. We will be here for the community throughout the COVID-19 crisis with new conversations every Monday at 5 p.m.
And the most important message throughout the series of conversations is that there is hope for our community. Our focus is to create space in each meeting to talk about resources and things that we can all be doing to get through this pandemic. I really appreciate all of our panelists today who will be sharing incredible and pertinent resources. Throughout our conversation, please do submit questions to be addressed by our speakers using the question and answer function in Zoom. And while we cannot promise that we will have time to consider every question, we will make our best effort to get through the list in our allotted time.
Thank you, Twina. As a housekeeping matter and for the security of everyone on this call, everyone's mic has been muted, and we are not allowing everyone to share their faces on video. We've also disabled the chat function, so please submit your questions to our moderator, Mr. Rob Huff, through the Q&A function. And now I'd like to introduce our panel for tonight. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tafona Ervin from Graduate Tacoma. Welcome, Dr. Ervin. Jeff DeLuca. Hello there, Mr. Jeff DeLuca. Jeff is from Washington State Community Action Partnership. It's great to have you here, Jeff.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Hollie Coates-Seamster from Tacoma Public Utilities. Welcome, Hollie. And Kierra Phifer from Puget Sound Energy. Thank you, Kierra, for being here. So, there she is. She popped in, Miss Heather Moss. Well, hello there. Heather Moss. She is from Pierce County. Heather, thank you for being here today as well.
Sure.
So let's get started, and I want to give you kind of a little lay of the land. We have some questions that we are wanting to hear your expert opinion on. And I'm going to be asking the questions, but I will not be calling on people. I'm going to let you decide to self-select in. As Pam Duncan has said, she values silences, and sometimes those silences speak louder than the words that are being spoken. So if we're ready, one of the first questions we like to ask everybody here is, how is everyone doing tonight? And what I mean by that is, how is your heart?
Well, I can jump in on that. This is Heather from Human Services at Pierce County. I think there's a lot of complicated feelings going on right now. I happen to be in Montana, so dialing in from afar, I decided to run away for a few days to take a break, and so I'm at my in-laws' cabin in the mountains, which is a wonderful escape to be at. But my heart is also very challenged, I guess, or conflicted in the sense that I know that there's a lot of hard work that needs to happen and a lot of families who need our help. So I'm just so grateful for the strong team that we have back at the Human Services Department working on that, and I'm excited to share with you some of the resources that we've put out into the community and made available for all of our fellow citizens in Pierce County.
Thank you, Heather, and good for you for taking some time out on some self-care.
My heart is wishing I was with Heather in Montana having self-care. But I like the word conflicted. I think for sure I've been conflicted for many months, and I think every passing day gets a little bit harder to try to deal with that conflict. Sometimes you hear you love hard, and that doesn't always take a positive form. And I think as the brain is trying to wrap itself around all of the information that continues to come in, and the heart continues to weed for all of the injustice that continues to hit and impact our most vulnerable populations, I find conflict often. But I think that, and I resonate most with this idea that hope is here, and it's among us, and that we've got to continue to press forward to figure out what's best for the control and the influence that we have in order to support, in my context, youth and young adults. So that's where I am today.
Thank you, Dr. Ervin.
My heart also loves when you say that, Amanda. Thank you.
My heart too. Dr. Ervin sounds so good. I mean,
Sweetie, that's it. And if someone doesn't call you Dr. Ervin,
Yes.
send them to me.
I'll go next since my mic is now unmuted. So yeah, I'm Twina Nobles, President and CEO of Tacoma Urban League, and it's Monday, and I guess I'm dressed, but it's been a busy Monday, just such a busy day, and I got good self-care in this weekend, but Monday was not coming to play games, so I'm still trying to catch up. But I'm definitely blessed to be in a position to be able to provide resources to the community during this very challenging time. I feel very fortunate to be in partnership with organizations like MDC, organizations like Graduate Tacoma and PSE and TPU and Pierce County, and grateful for community action organizations in the entire network, because collectively we've been able to communicate many resources to the community, but tonight will be very important. I know someone in our community will hear a resource for the very first time. We can never assume everyone knows everything, even though it's on our websites and social media pages and we've been communicating it. But this conversation tonight will, I'm sure, help a family, will give someone additional hope, will close the gap as our community members are dealing with this pandemic. So it's a busy time and very emotional time. And as Dr. Ervin said, a very conflicting time, dealing with all the emotions and ups and downs, but also a time to show our strength as a community and to be there for each other. So I'm happy to just be here with each and every one of you.
Thank you, Twina.
I'll go next. My name is Jeff DeLuca. I'm the executive director of the Washington State Community Action Partnership, which is the state association of community action agencies, of which MDC is a part. And I would say today I'm feeling conflicted is definitely a word that resonates, but also, and I didn't really expect this, but I'm feeling very resolved. That some of the opportunities that are coming up over the next few weeks to advocate and to expand resources that are available to people as the federal government considers the next COVID-19 stimulus package, and the Senate will be taking that up in a couple of weeks. It's going to be very important that we all lift our voices and take advantage of that time frame to make sure that we are advocating for the folks that we're serving, and to make sure that our communities have the resources that they need. And I'm feeling very grateful to be on this panel of amazing folks doing amazing work in their communities to help people get through this.
Well said. Thank you, Jeff.
I can go next, Amanda. I'm Hollie Coates-Seamster. I work at Tacoma Public Utilities. I'm the supervisor of our customer solutions team. So our team is the group responsible for assisting our customers that are struggling to pay their utility bills. And so during this time for me, I can say I'm very proud of the hard work that the city of Tacoma as well as Tacoma Public Utilities has put into and being bold about their anti-racism statement. So for me, I'm very proud to hear that, and now I'm excited to see what does that look like for our organization and what does that look like as we continue to serve the community and our customers. And for me personally, self-care has presented itself in the form of Hamilton, and my family can now understand why I have been singing these songs for the last 2 years, because they were not with me when I saw it. And I have decided that I am the fourth Schuyler sister.
Well, I'm glad you decided.
Come on, helpless.
Oh no, exactly. So that has been my release, is enjoying Hamilton on numerous occasions now.
That is some good medicine. Even though I haven't seen it, I've heard it's good. And Miss Kierra.
Hi there. Good evening. I'm Kierra Phifer. I'm the local government affairs manager for Puget Sound Energy down here in Pierce County. And I like what Twina said about community resilience. PSC sees themselves as a part of the fibers of our community. And we have seen over the last few months how resilient our communities can be here in Washington state. In terms of personal resiliency, I also abide by standards of self-care, and recently I started a 10,000 steps a day challenge, and I've done it every day for 2 weeks now, and I have to say that I've noticed that my mood has been affected significantly just by getting outside and getting moving, and so I highly recommend that to everybody out there.
Boy, this was a great check-in. Miss Pam, would you like to tell us how you're feeling?
Everything that people said pretty much resonates with me, beginning with Heather talking about feeling conflicted. I feel that on a regular basis. And I am also always very hopeful about that we are able to together take on the challenges, that we can tackle the challenges that we are facing. And I too believe in self-care. I am encouraged to hear from Kierra about the steps, and I'm joining you in the 10,000 step challenge that officially begins right now.
Okay, we heard it right here on Straight Talk. It's been filmed. It's in the annals of history. Okay, Pam.
All right.
Thank you, all of you, for your great heart talk. One of the questions we'd like to ask you is, with the wide range of expertise on our panel tonight, can each of you share what are your primary resource needs you are currently seeing in our community?
Well, I can go first if you like me to, Amanda. With working at Tacoma Public Utilities, so what I'm seeing is through that lens. And to date, Tacoma Public Utilities has set up the emergency assistance. So if our customers that are struggling to pay their utility bill, we have an online application, they're able to apply, and we're able to give them a little bit of a credit onto their account to kind of ease the burden. And so what we're starting to see is we're now at a point where this has gone longer than we all expected. And we're starting to see that the utility bills are continuing to climb. So I know behind the scenes, TPU's management is working really hard at what is a plan to manage those bills. But at this point, what my team is seeing and the applications that are coming in and the gratitude that people are expressing, just for the little bit we've been able to do, it still doesn't feel like it's enough. There's still a lot more work that we need to do to help our customers recover from this.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, Amanda, I can jump in here real quick. This is Heather again from Human Services at Pierce County. The needs are pretty great all across the county, and we see a lot of this information and media nationally talking about rental people being behind on their rent and worry of eviction and being behind on mortgages. And as Holly was talking about, not having money to pay their bills and having to go to a food bank for the first time in their lives. So we're seeing a lot of people who might not normally hit our social services system, looking for ways to connect and looking for help in meeting some of their basic needs. So I really think it's right now, and for the last few months, it's been about basic needs that will probably keep going as we cycle in and out of going back to work and dialing up and dialing back the economy. So we're very pleased to be offering a lot of resources around rental assistance and mortgage assistance, and working with Holly and her team around utility supports even. What I think it will be interesting to see over the next few months is how we transition into longer term supports. And I'm talking about as children go back to school, whatever that looks like, thinking about how the childcare piece fits around that. Or now that we have people going back out into the workplaces, we expect to see, sorry to say, a little bit of an increase in domestic violence reporting. So there are just a lot of things that are happening now, and then we plan to see emerging over the next few months. And again, so much of this is new people coming into these systems that don't know how to use our systems. So one of the things that keeps me up at night is trying to figure out how to get that sweet spot of getting information to people who aren't used to using our system. Is it the internet? Is it TV? Is it radio? Is it just putting out mailers, flyers at the laundromat? So we're trying to think about how do we reach out to people who wouldn't normally think to call and ask for help.
Thank you, Heather.
I'll hop in just to give a little state and national perspective on some of those basic needs issues that we're staring down right now. We are facing a crisis right now with regard to people not being able to make rent. And people not being able to make their mortgage payments. And we're seeing the predictable racial disparities playing out in that as well, where so the Washington Low-Income Housing Alliance has been analyzing these monthly census pulse reports, which are tracking renters and how they have been dealing financially with the pandemic through surveys. And they found that about 51% of Black renters had little to no confidence that they were going to be able to pay for their rent in Washington state in July. We're seeing about 3 times as many Black Washingtonians missing rent payments as white Washingtonians. There's also a major disparity among Asian and Latinx populations as well. And one of the other big needs that we're seeing right now is the lack of assistance that's available appears to be driving people toward basically debt solutions. That pulse report also showed that more Washingtonians are using more renters are using credit cards and loans to meet their financial needs than are using unemployment or the stimulus, which was $1,200, what feels like 10 years ago at this point. If folks ever got it at all. And so those, and we know that there have been problems with getting those stimulus checks and filing for unemployment and receiving those benefits that folks are entitled to there. So that lack of resources is driving people toward predatory and burdensome long-term problems down the road.
Thank you, Jeff, for that picture.
And at PSE, we know this pandemic is deeply affecting many of our customers, and we have been working since its start to ensure that no one is without electricity, heat, or hot water during this time. We are in unprecedented times, and it'll take continued partnership and creativity to help as many people out as possible. As such, PSE announced a few months ago that we would be making $11 million in funds available through our crisis-affected customer assistance program for those who had been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The program is available to our customers in Pierce County and then throughout our 10 county service territory. And depending on average monthly usage, a qualified PSE customer must have a monthly household limit of 250% of the federal poverty level, and our customers can receive up to $1,000 in a one-time credit, depending on how they've been affected by the pandemic. And the eligibility is you have to demonstrate either that you've been put on unemployment or hours have been covered, you've been otherwise affected by COVID-19. And that is in addition to our traditional income assistance programs. If you are on PSE's HELP program or any other low income assistance program, you can also qualify for the Crisis Affected Customer Assistance Program or KCAP program as well. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to support our customers during this difficult time.
Kierra?
And certainly it doesn't help to compound all of the basic needs that was just described. How can education for many families be seen as a priority when families are trying to think about how do they survive, how do they live, where do they live? I think what we are seeing, particularly in the context of education, is very similar. Access to meaningful, safe programs and spaces that allows for children to get the type of quality care, education that is required is not only going to be a very interesting dynamic going into this next academic year. I question how one will measure standards against the very diverse way in which we'll deliver services in education in the state. I also question, with not knowing the universe of the digital divide, as you all may know, that students and families lack adequate access to internet, as well as devices themselves. How do we really expect households to support their youth, especially if they have youth that range from elementary, middle, and high, or let's not forget 0 to 5 who need childcare? And so I think that the resources are going to increase significantly, especially as we go into a new unknown normal, and we try to understand the landscape. But what we know today, at least in Tacoma, is that youth and young adults, particularly Black and Brown youth, are trying to find creative alternative ways to make up their time this summer without having real guidance or structure, because we are limited by physical and social distancing impacts. And so I think those will continue to compound in addition to what you all have just described, which now makes my heart feel even more conflicted, but just unsure about how to really think through these very complex challenges.
Beautifully said, Dr. Ervin. So I want to ask this question, and each of you have kind of touched on this in terms of how it sits with you. So I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to get to some of the chat questions we have. And also we're going to talk about what resources each of you believe would be a good clearinghouse for people to go to that would represent perhaps some of your area of expertise. I want to ask this question: what is not available? And what keeps you awake at night?
Amanda, I don't mind going first with that question. I got to chew on that one for a minute. I think, again, my perspective is specifically utility. I think it's tied together. What's keeping me up at night is also tied to this, that we're doing what we can for our customers, but is it enough? And so for me personally, to see that we weren't able to move forward with the next phase of reopening was kind of a setback for me personally, because that means I have a segment of customers that's going to take even longer for me to reach. I won't be able to see them. So what keeps me up at night is those customers. It's my seniors and my disabled customers that are already on my low income assistance programs. And one of my employees was late to one of our meetings because she literally was on the phone for 2 hours with an older gentleman. And she was helping him get the assistance and filling out the application. He just wanted someone to talk to. And he asked, his wife had passed, and he said, "Can I sing you flowers? I'm sure my wife would be okay if I did." And so we're starting to, and some of the notes are starting to come in. And so that's what keeps me up at night, is how do I reach these customers that up until pre-COVID, we were part of their monthly routine. They came into the lobby to pay their bill, even though we have all of these other devices and ways to make payments. We welcome them into the lobby. They come, they pay their bill, and they leave. Well, they don't have that anymore. So that was part of their human connection prior to COVID-19. So those are the ones that keep me up at night. I worry about them. And so as a supervisor over my group, the next phase that we're looking into is, what does outreach look like to these most vulnerable customers? And so with all of us working from home, we've all got TPU telephones deployed home. We have our email inbox. So we're working on a plan on how do we do outreach to these customers, calling them on the phone, doing a check-in, and then see if you haven't applied for any assistance, what can we do to help them? So that's in a nutshell is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I would add, I think it's interesting. We have to be responsive very quickly to a lot of the challenges that are in front of us. But sometimes it's at the risk and expense of doing this thoughtfully, doing this sustainably, and really being intentional with how we service our youth, young adults, or families. And I'm often up at night. In fact, I keep a pen and pad next to my bed because I wake up in the middle of the night and I jot down a note of what I'm thinking, because something struck me from earlier today, because I imagine all of you are having these ongoing Zoom calls and such, trying to solve world's problems. But the field of social services is so complex, and it's so challenging. And I think I'm both afraid of how fast we're responding, but also we're not responding fast enough. So what do you really do? I don't come with solutions. I really come with more just curiosities for myself, but this is something that I grapple with frequently, and definitely the state of where I am today.
Kind of a catch-22, Dr. Ervin, isn't it?
I think, Amanda, thinking about that idea of a catch-22, what keeps me awake is, I already talked a little bit about making sure that we're reaching out to people who need services and knowing that they know how to get help when they need it. But what I see coming on January 1st is a huge cliff for us, because a lot of the great resources that the county's put in place have a deadline on them. And we are expected to spend these $158 million of CARES dollars between March of this year and December 30th by the end of the year. So while we have a lot of great programs in place and we're really geared up and ready to help people in these next few months, we all collectively face a pretty gaping hole in terms of need, I think, beginning in January, because as you all are assessing, like me, this isn't ending anytime real soon, unfortunately. So I think just the longer term implications of how long we might see people in need is a little bit daunting, frankly.
Thank you, Heather.
I would echo what Heather said, is I'm concerned about that. at a statewide level, and that all that CARES Act money, it has to be spent out by the end of the year, and it really depends on what the Congress does here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That will determine what kind of aid we have going into the new year. In terms of a particular area that I'm very concerned about right now, and I have been for a while now, is food assistance. That really seems to be an area that is not getting as much attention as it deserves. We have 3 times as many kids going hungry right now as we did during the height of the Great Recession. And increases to SNAP are virtually off the table in Senate discussions right now. There are some programs here, and new and continued ones that I can talk about around pandemic EBT, as well as WIC, special supplemental nutrition, continuing online services through a waiver that has now been extended, so those can be accessed online. But in terms of growing resources to meet the need, that is definitely lacking in the area of food assistance, and just in general, what we're seeing regarding the resources, whether it's rental assistance or anything else, is just not at the scale of the need. That's what's keeping me up at night.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hi there. And, you know, we also at PSE see that there is an increased demand for food and food security. And so the Puget Sound Energy Foundation, which is it's a separate organization from PSE, but it is a related foundation, gave over $200,000 to the Washington Food Fund, where Washington-based organizations working on the front lines of food insecurity will use the fund from numerous donors to distribute food to hundreds of food banks across the state, from our cities to our most rural communities. And additionally, we also donated $130,000 to local food banks throughout the state. All total, the PSE Foundation has donated over $1 million into our community, and we know that this is not enough, and there's so much more work to be done. And I think that's what keeps me up at night, is we've made progress in terms of responding to the need of this pandemic, but there's so much more work to be done.
Pam or Tawana, would you like to comment on this?
I would. There are the right now things that I'm concerned about, and the gaps that are not being addressed. And then I also think about 2 other things. One is, what is it that we don't know? And then, just as Heather mentioned, what happens when the money runs out? And so beginning with the right now, I'm concerned about the children who are whose households don't have access to Wi-Fi, and I just wonder I know that we're not doing enough right now for our kids, especially our Black and brown kids, during the summer months, and I'm very much concerned about that, and how we have to address that. And then, you know, like Tafona said, you know, what are the how do we measure how well children are doing in school, given that we won't have the traditional way of offering educational services, especially for public schools, because I think there's also a disparity for children who are in private schools, that they are going to have a lot more resources at their disposal than children who are in public schools. And again, I think about what is it that we are not aware of, you mentioned, Amanda, that I like silence, but this is a silence that I don't like because it's what we don't know. And then when does it become evident? I'm concerned. And the thing that really is keeping me awake at night right now is when all of these things start to come together. So they're slowly starting to come together, but when, when the economy really bottoms out and everything else, and people aren't able to pay their rent, and property owners need to make their mortgage payments, and on and on and on. And that's what is keeping me awake at night. And then what do we do? How do we address it?
And for me, definitely, I want to echo all the things that have been stated before, especially the needs of our students and youngest citizens, and whether it's food or the digital divide or housing, that definitely remains a gap for our community. I know we discussed early on in our Straight Talk conversations, and posed a question: where are our unhoused community members? Because we are not seeing them the way we used to see them. And this is not just adults, but their children who used to go to school at least during the day. And, where are those community members? How are they being supported? Our McKinney-Vento students, the families that schools have lost complete contact with, that districts have lost contact with, where are these community members? Our, friends, neighbors, the friends of, our children. I also think a lot about the gap in mental health services, and the Urban League launched, our effort to put some mental health services out in the community by prepaying for the services of Black therapists, so people can just set up an appointment and get help they need because they have lost a job, because they are showing up at the food bank for the first time and feel humiliated because they're depressed from sitting in their homes with their families and being disconnected from their social networks because they had to have a child or have a funeral in isolation. And so we're trying to do our part to put some of those mental health resources in our community, but there's a major gap in helping folks right now who are feeling lost and disconnected and alone beyond what is intended for us to be home and working remotely during this pandemic. Rental assistance was mentioned. That definitely is a gap, especially for our reentry community members. And the Urban League had some short-term grants helping with that, but it remains a need. And it was very difficult for me to say that we had those funds for a contract for a specified amount of time when the need still exists in July and August, and it was doing a really good thing. So we'll see what we can do, but we help to house folks who were released from jail or prison during this pandemic. And someone needs to continue doing that work, and in a way that, most of our community members who need the resources can get them. I think something that keeps me up at night is definitely predatory behavior. And I commend even, landlords and folks in our community who are doing the right thing and being gracious. But I definitely frown upon folks who are using this opportunity for folks who are in need, who are begging to keep their roof over their head, who are begging for food, begging to keep that job, to not lose their hours. And people are using this opportunity to be nasty to them, to tell them no, to show up as true community. I have no respect for that type of behavior. I also think a lot about folks who are familiar with our organizations and show up to the building for the services and our doors are closed. That breaks my heart. People who have come to the Urban League for 4 decades and have been able to rely on services being present in that building, normal office hours, and the fact that our staff cannot be there because we too need to be healthy and home, and our kids are also home, and we're managing the same types of barriers and challenges, but it breaks my heart, and it does keep me up when I think about where now folks are all of a sudden supposed to find us on Facebook and on our website. Now resources, we're expected for people to connect with resources virtually. So it's problematic to me. I'm grateful for people who have found a way to call us or email us or find us on social media, but I know we're missing a large segment of community members because our doors are simply not open. And I wish for employers and employees just, you know, greater opportunities. The Urban League did its very best, again, during, you know, I think Tafona mentioned so much of this stuff is time sensitive and everyone's rushing and it's hard to be intentional and to have a plan. And so much of the Urban League's work has been learning all the acronyms, the EIDL and PPP and PPE while we're dishing it out. And it's like, look, I don't even know what this acronym means, but you need it and I have it. So let's get it out. And so I think it is hard to be intentional and hard to be calculated and strategic. And I know we're doing the best that we can, but you know, we're having to lead and learn at the same time, and that's what makes us great. You know, those of us who are in community and you know, we want to be able to be flexible and responsive, but what makes us sustain is strategy and thinking about how are we going to do this for the long term, and what is the real problem and how do we get to the root of the problem and not the temporary solutions, right? I know that's what organizations like Graduate Tacoma are really good at, the strategy and mobilizing the community so we can sustain in this work and see the change. So it's, you know, there are lots of gaps and pieces that keep me up and disappointment and bring me to tears. But I have to say, just like everyone on this call, it does not stop us from showing up and doing the work the very next day. We may only have some of these resources until December, but you best believe we will be deploying them into the community until December, you know, trying to figure out strategies and ways to have resources in January. I mean, there are, you know, committed individuals who are showing up to do this work, who continue to show up to their jobs to serve the community well. So there are deadlines and timelines, but we're in this for the long haul, and we'll be here, you know, while our community is experiencing, you know, these challenging times, but also while our community is rebuilding it and getting stronger.
Well said, Senator Nobles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we have some in our audience right now. We have a couple of questions that are just very timely, given what each of you has shared. And the first question I want to put out there is we have somebody who has 3 people who are homeless right now. We have 2 children and a mom. And the question is there any vouchers for a hotel that you know of or anywhere that's taking a family of 3?
Yes.
Go, Heather.
Yes. Call Helping Hand House right now. And I will look it up while you talk something else and get a phone number. But Helping Hand House, which operates out of Puyallup, but is serving all of Pierce County right now, providing vouchers for homeless families to be in a hotel, I think up to 2 or 3 weeks. So really providing that emergency stopgap.
That's hope in action right there. The other question that we have is, what kind of services are available right now for somebody who is undocumented?
One that I can speak to is the State Disaster Cash Assistance Program, which falls kind of under emergency management. That is available to folks without any requirement of proof of citizenship. And if you have had some sort of loss of income or property as a result of the pandemic, you are eligible to apply for that cash assistance program. You also will be, you are required to also apply for any other assistance that you may be eligible for. That would be limited for undocumented folks, of course, and there are conversations happening right now and advocacy around expanding resources available to undocumented folks in Washington, as California and I believe Oregon have also made more money available for that. But expanded eligibility under the Disaster Cash Assistance Program is important for folks to know.
Thank you, Jeff, so much.
Amanda,
yes.
really quick. So For Tacoma Public Utilities, in order to apply for our assistance, the person applying needs to be the account holder. So if you have a Tacoma Public Utilities account in your name, you can apply. So if you have undocumented family members living in your home, you can list their name, but we will not ask for additional documentation for them residing in your home. And so if language is also, English is not your first language, we have resources available. On my team, I have a Spanish speaking employee. We also have a language line that we can do a 3-way call with an interpreter. I just want to make sure that the person asking the question knows that if you go to our website, mytpu.org, there's a Spanish version and a Vietnamese version of our emergency assistance application. We're working to add other languages, but just know that you can, as long as the account is in your name, you can list your family members, and we do not share your information with other agencies.
I just have a quick question for the panel. Can everyone access the Q&A box just in case, if you see a question and you want to jump in and respond to it, that way Amanda can pose them, but some of them are good, like the question about anyone who wants to recommend, strategies for building resilience in a community and how we build social trust during this pandemic. And there's a question about, does Helping Hand House need to, for that resource, do you have to go through coordinated entry? But if folks can all see them, you can probably also be prepared to respond to them.
Absolutely. And I want to say thank you so much for putting all the information in the Q&A about Helping House. One of the other questions, and Tawana is correct, we've got some really beautiful questions on our Q&A. And this is, a couple of panelists mentioned community resilience, and I think this falls into what Tawana always says of there's always hope. And this person would love the panelists to reflect on how together do we build resilience as a community, and how do we build social trust during both pandemics?
I can only, and then I'm gonna mute myself because I too want to hear the experts. But because I was talking about this with the city of Tacoma and with another community member, in order for us to build trust, especially now, I think people have to, everyone has to do what they're telling the community they're available to do. And I think that is with resources. So even what's communicated tonight about what's available to the community and how they can tap into our different organizations, I think we have to be honest about, like we have been, when we have resources, how long we have resources, the processes to access those resources, but also making sure we deliver when people contact us. And I think it's critically important to get the word out, but be careful when we can help 100 people with rental assistance, but then we're marketing it in a way that we have 2,000 people applying for rental assistance. So I think there needs to be some intentionality around those types of resources. I appreciate the city of Tacoma doing things like a lottery, but I think to do things like first come, first serve, make the community have to compete with each other, for folks to, follow up on things that they hear and those resources are not available, those things are not going to build trust. So I know at the Urban League, we try to be responsive. We try to provide, really good really good customer service and community interface, making sure that we're listening to the needs of the community. But right now, I think a key piece of building trust is being available and being responsive and being honest about, your capacity. And we don't have to, like as the Urban League, we are a small organization. Our work is mighty, and we have tremendous, and powerful partners and really smart partners. But we're honest about our capacity, even when folks want to give resources to us. If it's creating more work, it's not helping our organization. If, we need partners to say, we will come in and do this part of the labor, instead of, can the same 4 of you, put these resources in the community. But I know that I can say I don't have the capacity, but I'm willing to play this role in partnership with Graduate Tacoma or in partnership with another community member. We can write the grant so we can get the laptops out to the community, but with our small staff, we can't deliver $18,000 worth of laptops. But some volunteers somewhere with some other organization or agency can. So I think, being honest about our capacity, and when people show up to the resources that are being communicated tonight, that we actually can deliver on those resources, that when, that family, with 3 children contacts Helping Hand House, my prayer is that they deliver and they can help them, because our community is not going to trust us if we don't come through when they need us most.
Yeah, I wanted to just add in the context of, I think so often we as experts get lost in our expert lane that we forget to build the capacity and capability back in the people who really have the answers to some of these challenges, but we don't hear them enough to make it policy or make it the way that we adjust our institutions or our systems. And I think this is an opportunity. This is a time by which we should probably do that. As we think about how the systems have been built, particularly around regulatory practices and the way that they continue to marginalize, it's a way for us to think differently. So if it's, I'm not an expert in housing at all, but if it's an opportunity to think differently about housing can be rethought, reconfigured, redesigned, let's ask our families who are asking for the help to give us some ideas of what that looks like, as opposed to going to our same content experts, right? I think there was a question or a comment in the chat about what would it look like to help build and get this word out in this pandemic? And I'm reflective of when the George Floyd murder happened. Shortly thereafter, many of us were in the streets protesting and doing demonstrations. And we did so because we were in this real energized frustration of wanting to get our voices heard, but we were doing so safely, we were doing so responsibly, at least in Tacoma. And because of that, I think that there's ways that we can be in the community and giving resources and not relying on technology, and hope that people are coming to our sites and hoping that they're reading what's on our very convoluted web pages and such, but rather we are out there doing the parent sharing that we are in community. And that takes capacity. And I think that the capacity can't always be on organizations because there's always already so much happening. But if we were to think differently about engaging community to be the channel or the agents out there, to give them capacity to do that work, to pave the streets, think about how different that would be. And the response to how people respond to them asking the questions or giving them the resources will be different from you and I, because we sit in what's perceived as an ivory tower, whereas they are actually in community. And so I think that there's a lot to be learned and said about how we really rethink our efforts, but we've got to be willing to take the risk and be okay with failing forward in that risk taking.
I want to jump in. I also noticed a question in the Q&A about the resources that MDC has, and I had already posted that MDC offers rental assistance and utility assistance, as well as weatherization for community members who reside in the city of Tacoma. Similarly, Pierce County's Community Action Partnership Program offers those same services to those who reside outside of the city of Tacoma within Pierce County. One of the unique things about being a community action agency is the ability to tap into community services Block grant dollars that allow for an additional influx of dollars for those specific things. So it's in addition to the other resources that are in the community. And I posted in the website, in the chat box, I'm sorry, that folks can access those various resources that we have by either going to our website or calling that phone number that's listed in the chat. And I'll also get that for Heather for the Pierce County.
Yeah, I can certainly offer that, Pam, so we can put the resources up for the Community Action Program services outside of the city of Tacoma in the county. But I also want to mention, Holly put in the chat a referral to United Way 211. We rely on them a ton to get information out about all of the county programs. So I think that's always a good place to start when people are looking for a variety of services and supports that they might need.
And I am posting in the chat for everyone the URL, the website for United Way that shows if you go to the site, you can either call 211, but if you go to United Way's website, you'll see this list of all of these resources that are categorized. So that's another resource for folks to check into. But the question that was asked, part of that question, Amanda, was about just building the trust and bringing the community together. And this is one of the ways that we are making that attempt to do that, to reach out to the community. And the whole driver for it was that we are all on these calls all day long, every single day. And we know there are so many folks who are not. And we see this as a way to be able to reach deep into the community and to get that information out and just keep people apprised of what's happening with coronavirus and its impacts on our community.
I'd be remiss if I didn't share that, at least from our organizational perspective, that you can also go to tacomalearns.org for resources that are more on the educational front, that gives opportunities for youth and young adults to engage in programming and activities. Certainly mill sites for the county are listed there during the summer months, as well as opportunities for families just to better understand what they can be helping their children do. And then I would also say our graduatetacoma.org website, I think there was a question about advocacy. While we do local advocacy primarily, we have started diving more into statewide policy work. And I would say that there is opportunity for any community resident at any time to lend their voice to some of the challenges around policy injustice and or right-sizing them to support particularly our most vulnerable, marginalized, as we think about this. And so graduatetacoma.org/advocacy, I believe, is where you can find those efforts and be able to do some of that as well.
So I want to tag off of Jeff when he mentioned during our opening that 51% of people right now polled are not going to be able to pay their rent in the month of July. So as that momentum and that ripple effect moves forward, question for all of you, are our communities ready for a potential surge in evictions and rise in homelessness this fall and this winter? And that keeps me up at night.
Yeah. So I want to jump on that really quick, Amanda. What I would say initially is that no, we do not want to see a rise in homelessness. If any of you saw the point in time count data that we released in the last few weeks, we've seen a pretty significant growth even from last year of homelessness here in Pierce County. That is not something we want to see going up even further. So what I think is happening is that a lot of people are their rent. Maybe they're using their credit cards, as we heard earlier tonight, but they're waiting for some grand gesture, for some government initiative that will just forgive their rent. And I think that it behooves all of us to tell people that's the way that's coming is the rental assistance programs that are being run by all of the organizations now. People need to take advantage of those because they are not some like just a write-off for all those debts. So I think there's a little bit of head in the sand, frankly, right now, that people are just hoping that it'll all work out and they need to take action. So the more that we can spread that word that there are resources out there right now that people need to take advantage of, the better. And I'll cede my time to other people to weigh in on that. I just wanted to make sure I said that right now because that's really scaring me right now, that people are waiting for something to happen, but they need to step in and take a little bit of initiative too to take advantage of the programs that are out there right now, so we don't end up with more people on the streets.
Mm-hmm. And the Washington State Department of Commerce is about to release $100 million from the CARES Act funds to counties and community action agencies and other partners to increase those resources that are available for rental assistance. And I agree completely with Heather. It's so important that we encourage folks to take advantage of the assistance that is available. It is a really uncertain time for a lot of people. So I think, there is a temptation to just sock away as much kind of cash as you can, because no one knows where this is, going, or, and that uncertainty, we have to be engaged with our community members, our clients, everyone who we work with, to make sure that folks understand the superstructure that's really at play here. And I keep coming back to the supplemental package that the Congress is working on right now. We're going to have a lot of questions answered one way or the other in a few weeks here, and we will be able to speak with more certainty, I think, around what resources are available and for how long. Because we're also, as service providers and advocates, working with incomplete information. We're having to make assumptions too, based on the best information that we have.
I just want to add, I was looking, just kind of scanning through the questions that are posted in the Q&A, and someone said or asked, what about rental assistance, for someone who is not impacted by COVID? And both MDC and the county provide rental assistance. So I want to be very clear about that, there's not an additional stipulation that you must indicate that you've been impacted by COVID. And I will say we all have been impacted by COVID. One last thing, I just see such a wealth of resources that are listed in the chat box, and we are going to figure out a way to compile all of this information and make it so that it's available to everyone. And I think that's not just to the folks who participated, whether you are a panelist or you are listening in, but also that we just have it on our websites or something so that people will see all of these various resources. Okay, I'll turn it back to you, Amanda.
What a fabulous panel. Unbelievable, just the resources and the hope and the love. One of the last questions for our listeners is, are there some key experts that we could reach out to in help of navigating what is available? Some people have relationships over resources, or if you're like me, I watch the city council meetings all of the time. So are there some key people that you would recommend?
Definitely call Tacoma Urban League. And I did post in the chat box a comment from our office manager, Michelle Ogden, and I see she posted it again in the Q&A box, but I'll put the contact information for KWA, Korean Women's Association. But as we talk about relationship, definitely contact Tacoma Urban League, and we have Michelle and several volunteers from the YWCA, as well as interns, and again, some really good partners who are helping us with providing resources, but staying in there with you, not just giving you a phone number or an email, but circling back to see if you connected with the resource, just checking to make sure you have what you need, being accessible and available, or communicating, that's not something we provide, but here is someone that does, and that's around employment, education, justice, housing, or healthcare. So we want to make sure we're at least utilizing our, desire to build relationship and the relationships that we currently have to connect folks to resources and to stay in it with them, so that community members feel supported. But I already put the website for Tacoma Urban League, but do contact Tacoma Urban League as a resource. And on our webpage, there's a contact box where you can add additional details about how we can help or support you.
Okay, so I want to throw out the last question. And that question is, for all of you, what gives you hope?
Okay, so I'll jump in on that one, Amanda. What I find so inspiring, I'm still new here. I've only been at the county for a little less than a year now. What I find so inspiring about Pierce County is the high level of collaboration across our community. So we have governments at the county level, at the city level, and we have nonprofits all over our county who are just willing to step in and work together, which is what I'm so grateful for, because there are many people who will accept help, maybe not from the county, but from somebody else, from one of our partners. So I think what makes me hopeful is that there are many of us leaning in and trying to help, and also willing to share that space with others who might be more able to reach the people who are in need.
One of the things that gives me hope is working with some of the most talented, passionate professionals. I can't speak for anywhere else, but I think we have some of the best leadership in Tacoma and in Pierce County. A lot of them are on this call, and I'm so grateful to work with these men and women and others day in and day out.
For me, I would say this getting comfortable with ambiguity and failing forward, as you've heard me say, is really hopeful and inspiring. I think the enemy of trying to find perfection continues to just stop us in our tracks often, but the reality is that we are in a very interesting time. So being able to try and test things that we've never done before is really what I think will be the reflecting point of this very interesting 2020 that we'll look back to for many years to come and say, because we tried all of these things, we're in a better place.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just, Dr. Ervin, what you said resonated with me so much. The creativity and the new partnerships and the breaking down of walls between communities, between sectors, and that shared sense of mission, even when we don't see the kind of leadership and compassion that we would like to see at the very top of where these resources are coming from sometimes. We are finding it in our communities, and we're finding avenues like this to come together and try and solve these problems.
Amanda, I think for me is what's given me hope is seeing the little things that people are doing and how impactful it is. I know for myself included, I'm not a large personality. I'm not one comfortable being front and center all the time leading a march. But there are little things that people are doing that's not their niche, that they're able to contribute. I've got friends that are donating their time and energy to make masks. And so I slide them a couple of dollars to help them continue to do that. I live in Pierce County. I'm in South Hill, Puyallup. A young man staged his own protest all alone on a corner at 176th and Meridian, holding up his sign. And he stood out there by himself. And the next one word got out that what this young man endured, the community rallied, and they've been out there every weekend. And so my contribution was to photograph this young man so I could document what he has done and seeing what my neighbors are doing. So for me and for the introverts, there are little things you can do to support the effort without feeling like you have to be front and center. Oh, and one last thing, I renewed my membership to the Urban League, so that was my little piece as well.
Thank you. No, and I'm in there with the introverts. People think I'm an extrovert, but I'm like, child, I don't be out here leading protests in the street. I don't even go to Puyallup Fair. I don't do large crowds. I have social anxiety, believe it or not. That's just a true confession on a Monday.
All right. Pam, can you tell us what's going to happen next week?
Oh man, yes. And I just want to say that my head and my heart are so full from this discussion. We always have really, really good discussions every Monday that we are here. This one has a different tone to it. It helps to just get out there that the hope that is out there is so evident, that all of you, all of us have such a heart for our communities, and we want to do the best we can. And it's also evident that we are, that even when we get tired and we are exhausted and we have decision-making fatigue, that, okay, so we need to just kind of press pause, take care of ourselves, and then get right back into the game, because this is relentless and we can't let it get away from us. And so what I want to tell you again is thank you all so very much for being a part of tonight's session. Whether you are in Tacoma or you are in a cabin up in the mountains getting your mini retreat on, and I say go Heather, go. That no matter where you are, thank you so much for what you are doing. Thank you for making the time to be part of tonight's discussion. Next week on July 20th, we will be revisiting what's going on with the pandemic. We will be having medical and healthcare professionals come in and talk about what it means at this point, because we know that we've seen the numbers creep back up again, and just to really drive home the importance of all of us following the mandates that have been laid out before us. So more to come about that. And then I just want to say that something that just became really evident to me from tonight's discussion is that we always hold these sessions, and everyone, our listening audience, just basically leans in and listens to what's going on. But I saw so many questions tonight about how can I help? What can I do? How can I make certain that this information gets out further into the community? So I just did a real quick informal check-in with my partners here to talk about having in 2 weeks or so a session where it's a real working session with the community, and so that we come together to do some solution seeking and come up with some tangible ideas. So we'll have some breakout rooms, and all of this right now is all on the fly. It is just very evident though that there's a way that we can use this venue to engage our community even more and allow folks to participate. So more to come on that.
Beautifully said. So on behalf of Straight Talk, I want to say thank you to Hollie, to Dr. Ervin, to Jeff, to Tawana, who never sleeps, to our wonderful tech host, Rob Huff, to Pam Duncan for her amazing grace and vision, to Kierra for taking time out of your busy schedule, and for Heather for taking time out of her slow vacation to be with us. All of you have hearts of gold, as my grandmother would say. And we hope to see you back here very, very soon. Good night.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you all.